Good evening. We're at the state capitol today, and I'm here with Representative Baker, and he represents District 17B up around the Wilmer area.
Yes.
And Dave, right? So for constituents that
Right.
they probably call you Dave.
Yeah, they call me Dave. Everybody calls me Dave, right?
Fair enough. Well, tonight I want to start off a little bit with you talking about the budget negotiation.
Okay.
We haven't hit the negotiation portion yet, but you could say we're in the on deck circle.
We're certainly deep into the negotiations right now because, again, you've got three legs on the stool here in St. Paul. And if we don't have all three stools there, we are not going to get everything done in time, or we're not going to get it done like we want to. So right now the House and the Senate are deep into conversations, negotiating between those two bodies, and now we need to get Governor Dayton and his staff to sort of come quickly to the table so that we make sure that we've got the best bill possible to get done, completed by May 22nd, which is what we've promised our voters that we would get done this year. So we're well into it, but we still know we still have to get our third party to the table.
Let's talk about that for a second and give maybe viewers a little bit of the history on that, Representative Baker. This isn't the way it usually works. We don't summon commissioners to committee hearings. I mean, I think Margaret Anderson Kelleher tried that once with Palente's commissioners, and it didn't work out too well. Why change the rules like from last session to this session?
Well,
What prompted that?
as sort of a newbie, what happened last session was a disaster. And I think we all recognize that. And I think our leadership here, and I will tell you specifically my workings with Kurt Dowd, is he said, we are not going to let that happen again. So he pushed us early. We got our committee work done before the Easter break, and now we've got some time to make sure that our conference committees are done right. We're not here till 4 in the morning right now because we've got more time to do better bills and do them right. So I think that we want to make sure that we have plenty of time to send some things to the governor. If he does veto some things, which is okay, we'll come back and we'll try to work them and make them work again. But the short time that I have been here is something that I am not happy the way the sessions ended both times. So I've only seen a very small window. What I've seen so far is a very good strategy to make sure that we get the work done that Minnesotans expect us to do. And I'm really kind of grateful that our leadership has done their work and told us when to get certain things done, and it's so far encouraging. There is no reason why we can't get this work done on time. There is no reason at all. So I'm all in. They have told us to stand by. We'll be here on weekends from now on in, but we are going to get our work done on time, and that's a promise. We are all trying to make sure we're there, but we've got to get all the parties to the table.
Okay, sure. And what's the plan B if the governor doesn't send his commissioners to the hearings?
Well, we start sending bills to him now. I mean, that's the option, I guess. Without being in leadership myself, we can start sending him the big omnibus bills, and we can start sending him things. He's got 3 days to respond. Then we know where he's at. Then usually at that point, he'll come back and he'll write a letter about why he vetoed a bill. Yeah. Then we've got some signals. So I think we can do that, and we can run the game, and we can play the clock down if we need to. But my hope is that we don't have to wait till that long. Why not get everybody there and say what's really important to you in this bill? Let's make sure that then the senators and the House members can work that into the bill. So to me, that makes sense. Not everything in St. Paul makes sense, and I hope it doesn't get to be political. Because again, the one thing that we heard of the election this last summer was just get along and get things done and make common sense and be willing to negotiate and be willing to compromise when you need to. And we're willing to do that. We just want to get the work done.
We might come back to that in a minute, but let's talk about Speaker Dowd said before the Easter recess that first thing on the table when you guys got back was Real ID. Where are we at with that, and what's the progress being made in your view? Well,
again, I've not sat on the conference committee with Real ID. I will tell you that there's a real commitment that we do not want to leave this session without a Real ID bill. So you've got two different versions, one in the House, one in the Senate. The big connection that we're struggling with, I think, right now between the two bodies is, do we want to deal with the question about allowing the state rulemakers or the agency to expand driver's license to people that are not legal citizens? That's really what it comes down to. And I believe that there's a place to talk about undocumented people and having a driver's license at some point. This is not the bill to do it on. This is one we've got to talk about. This is like a passport card. and we've got to do a better job vetting our driver's license so that we can get on an airplane next year. That is our number one focus, is to make sure that Minnesotans that are legal citizens here do not get distracted or get delayed because we did not get our Real ID bill done. So that is the important part of this thing. I have heard from every one of our members, we are all committed to getting something done. I think that's going to happen. I think the governor has stated whatever comes to him in Real ID, he will accept. And I think we just have to work through those details about when to talk about that other issue that seems to be causing some distractions, but we will get this bill done for sure this year.
So the governor said that he wants to see a clean bill. I don't know if that applies to what the DFL is going to amend the bill like, but what are apart from that, what are the points of compromise there on that bill from the GOP perspective?
On the Real ID bill, what I understand is they're almost identical bills between the House and the Senate. And again, the DFL party really does want to include that discussion about undocumented residents. Again, I'm not one of those that's going to say that's a horrible problem, but because it's a problem within a lot of the majority here, you've got to recognize that that's important to our base and it's important to our team. That's not the time to talk about it. So let's remove that component and get it done. Otherwise, I think the bill is not really that controversial. I think we've all gotten over the fact the federal government is forcing us to have an enhanced driver's license system. You know, people were flying planes into our buildings, and that was a problem back in 9/11, and we've had to take some changes to that. Mm-hmm. So I think having an enhanced driver's license is a good idea. And again, in Minnesota, we're giving them a choice. They can have version 1. They don't have to do a thing different. If they don't want to get on an airplane, it's not important to them. Yeah. They don't have to do a thing different. But if they want to, we have an enhanced version. We need to get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, you make some good points there. I mean, I think if I remember correctly, though, all the 9/11 hijackers got on with legitimate ID and passports, which is, I guess, that's a problem looking for a solution, or
and the problem
way around.
Yeah, and the problem still is we have a broken immigration system. Yeah. That's the bottom line here, and that's a federal issue that they need to get their arms around. So we're just trying to figure out how do we still allow people to drive safely on our roads here, buy insurance. You know, these are people that are working around our community. They have tax ID numbers. They are paying taxes, yeah, but they are not allowed to drive their cars, and that's an issue we have to deal with separately.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on a little bit and talk about the committee that you're a chair of, the Select Committee on Technology and Government Responsiveness. Describe, would you, for the viewer, what do you mean by responsiveness?
Well, here's
what some of your bills. I read a few. So
well, and again, we just are getting the committee started. Right now, this is a kind of a genesis from our Speaker Dowd. And he said, Dave, this is something I've always wanted to do. There's a couple of states around the country that actually have what I would consider sort of a better relationship with the citizen when it comes to technology and reaching your state government. I think you ought to be able to have your driver's license renewed on your phone. And I think there should be a process that can update that, and they send you out a new one if nothing has changed. I think that your fishing license ought to be renewed on a smartphone, and you sort of have an Amazon effect, if you will, that you can be reminded that your license tabs are coming due next month on your Ford F-350 pickup. Would you want to push here and get your tabs renewed, send here, pay here, and they come in the mail? I think that we can do a better job in creating a better technology experience with our citizens that honestly, a lot of our computer systems in the state of Minnesota have a lot of that capacity. We don't have the Amazon experience, if you will, though, to have that ready to go yet. And that's the kind of work that our committee wants to do this summer. We want to go around to Minnesotans and listen around the state to some listening sessions. Hey, what ideas do you have? It might be paying a parking ticket. It might be things that we haven't even thought of. But I just think that our mission of our committee is to cybersecurity is important, technology is really important, but the Speaker wants us to find new ideas of how we can reach out to Minnesotans in a better, friendlier manner.
Yeah. Has the budget office, the nonpartisan office, done any analysis on like what the cost might be behind that? Might upset some in your base. Well, it's going to cost the government some money to do some of those things.
Right, and right now, because we're a select committee, we don't have any finance authority. We don't have a budget. So what we are going to do is try to find out what ideas can work now, what are the low-hanging fruit that we can actually get moving on? Because some systems, some legend systems are not compatible right now to do a sort of an application like we're talking about. So that's going to take a lot more investment. But what Speaker Dowd has told me that, look, if the right idea comes along, and if it's something that we can actually get behind with an actual dollar amount, and maybe there's a third-party vendor, we have a bonding bill possibly next year, and maybe there will be some money that we can put aside. But our committee's work is to try to advise the spending committees that have that authority to try to make some ideas and recommendations.
You mentioned the bonding bill, and because last year's bonding bill didn't get done, there was a lot of confusion at the end of the last, you alluded to it. So really the work of the entire legislative session was not to get a bonding bill done. So you mentioned next year. Are you thinking, just to be clear, are you thinking then postpone any bonding this year and deal with it next year, or are you thinking you can still get bonding done this year?
No, I think there will be a bonding bill this year. I know that Chair Erdahl, I think just this week, has introduced a bonding bill just yesterday or today. Now, it's a good starting place. I think it's going to go through their committee. I know that we've got a couple projects in my district that are in this that we were on last year's bonding plan. I'm definitely supportive of a bonding bill this year. I also think that depending on the size of it this year, there likely will be one in the normal bonding year next year. So we're playing a little catch up this year, and I'm grateful that the infrastructure needs around Minnesota will be addressed with a bonding bill this year. I'm hopeful we'll come up with an agreement. A lot of that is all tied to the other negotiations going on with a tax bill and a transportation bill. So we all got to make this puzzle fit. But I'm glad that we've announced and released early the bonding bill, which we haven't done in the little bit of time that I've done here. I'm happy that, again, part of our strategy is let's be more transparent. Let's get it out there and make sure Minnesotans know what we're doing.
Is it early or is it late? I can't tell because last year it didn't get done.
It didn't get done at all. So
it
again,
might be late.
in my short term, it's I think
it's
last
early
year,
for this year.
it was 5 days at the end
Yeah,
before the end of session.
remember.
So this is 3 weeks ahead of time. We've got a lot of time now.
You got time.
Right.
So, all right. Your select committee on technology, are you tasked with also addressing outstate broadband internet and internet for urban areas as well?
The broadband funding doesn't really go through my committee. That is in the House side. It's more of a House and Energy kind of authority. So, but our committee realizes the importance of broadband all around Minnesota, and so we support good backbone systems. We support all new technology. And I think that our committee will definitely be focused on where the broadband is best. But I mean, again, technology in Minnesota, we should assume that you can be able to get good high-speed internet around all of Minnesota in a short amount of time.
Yeah. Are they talking about, do you know if they're talking about fiber, right, when they say that?
Usually when you think of broadband, you think of a high-speed fiber network, because there is that is the magic backbone that we're really all talking about. There's still a lot of places for wireless, satellite. There's places for small cell technology too. So technology is changing very, very quickly, but the backbone truly is fiber network, which is glass wire basically that has no friction, and you can run it a long way and have a lot of speed. So that's the magic bullet of broadband, is the fiber network.
And you mentioned a little earlier before we started the interview that you've got a personal connection to opioids and fighting that. Can you talk a little bit about, would you mind talking a little bit about that and tell us what you're doing on that?
I love talking about my son, Dan. He was the oldest of 3 kids that my wife Mary and I had. He passed away when he was 25 years old of an opioid overdose. And you hear this story all too often about how a healthy person had an injury. My son had some back pain. Started taking some opioids, and he got hooked. And we lost him between the start to the end about 3.5 years is how quick it took him. And it took him out of college. He had to quit school at St. Thomas when he was a junior. And all these things that happen when people want to get better. His doctor did not want to certainly hurt him. But what we have to do is to educate people about how powerful these pills are and how they grab about 25% of the people that really don't have any idea the power of these pills. So my passion here on opioids has been to work with legislators on both sides of the aisle to have good reform and good policy that doesn't hurt our providers trying to help people in the doctor's office and the dentist's office, but a lot of them are overprescribing. A lot of them are just trying to they go quickly to the pain. How's your pain? Let's get you some pills. And they aren't taking the time to stop from it to see, Is there other options for pain? Have they been doctor shopping? Is this the right kind of person that shouldn't maybe be at a pain clinic? So there's a lot of things that have happened, but basically heroin or Oxycontin and oxycodone is synthetic heroin. And people have to realize that those are very powerful drugs that do take away pain, and there is a place for opioids for short-term pain when you have a broken arm or you come out of surgery. There's a place for this, but it is a deadly, could be a slippery slope, and it's obviously, our deaths in Minnesota are rising dramatically, and we've got to turn this thing around, and that's my work here.
You sort of alluded to it, Representative Baker, when you talked about some of the things that you could address on the doctor side. What are some other practical things that you're looking at as far as legislation to help with that?
A lot of it is mostly educating people. I think the one thing we can talk about is educating the effect of an opioid on a young brain. If you are under the age of 25 and you have never tasted this before, your brain is not fully functioned and fully matured, and your front cortex, it reacts differently to an opioid than you would, say, someone of mid-50s like we are. So I think it's important that we recognize education. Had our family known more about opioids and the strength they had, I think we would have been a better advocate for our son. And then because we just didn't know. Your doctor is giving you medicine. Why wouldn't you take the medicine? Also, I'm still angry at the companies that duped our medical industry. Purdue Pharmaceuticals brought out this Oxycontin, said it's non-addictive. These are time-released capsules, and they're the answer to our pain. At the same time, pain became the fifth vital that doctors are now talking about is we got to take away their pain. Well, wait a minute here. Some pain is actually okay. And so the problem is we had a perfect storm come together. Purdue Pharmaceuticals were found guilty in a court of law, pled guilty, paid a big fine, and yet in the meantime they have continued to roll out billions of dollars in profit. They're now the 16th wealthiest family in the United States, in Connecticut, and that angers people like me because they are not paying the outcomes of our society cost, and yet I struggle with that, and I think that we've got to do something about making sure that they pay the price of what they've done to fool our medical industry, and they are one of our most trusted industries out there is the medical community. So they feel duped as well, but doctors are doing a better job. They're understanding this better, but education is probably the biggest thing that we can do outside of just, slowing down the pills. But I do want to see opioid prescribing reduced by at least 50% in the next 24 months. That's my goal. I hope that happens. Some areas are doing a very good job at that already, but it's got to be done statewide.
Well, thanks for speaking on that. That's I know it's kind of difficult to talk about personal experiences like that. I appreciate it.
It's the only way we can change it if we talk about it, and there's a lot of families like mine that have had a terrible loss, and yet if we hide it, it's not the right way to approach it. But the one thing I do want to tell people is that if someone is struggling with addiction, never be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed. You are going to get help if you want help. It's no different than having cancer, but I think people are shamed with this disease, and we have to change that stigma. And so part of our discussions about this is that there is help, there is ways we can get you clean again, and you just got to trust that we have a way to do that. So that's the one thing we can do better.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'll wrap up with two questions for you. One, we like to ask legislators that we interviewed during the session is, can you talk about a colleague on the other side of the aisle that you work well with, that you get along with, that you respect, admire, things like that? Is there someone that comes to mind that you've had good experiences with? So just kind of letting people know that it's not everything they read in the news up here. So.
Very true. In fact, I work with a number of folks on both sides of the aisle. There's been some terrific new freshmen that have come to town recently. I know Representative May Quaid and I have worked on some different things together. She seems like a new representative I want to work with. On the Senate side, I've worked a lot with Senator Chris Eaton. Mm-hmm. Again, she lost a daughter to an opioid overdose. I've also worked very well with Senator Dan Schoen. He was also a representative here in the House last year. He's a law enforcement agent. There's a lot of really good representatives on both sides of the aisle, and I will tell you that you shouldn't be a representative or a senator if you can't get along with people and if you don't respect the election certificate they have hanging on their wall, because they worked just as hard as I did to get here, and if you don't respect people and their values, I guess, we don't have to agree, but at least respect their voice and respect what they have to say. And to me, that's how government ought to work, is that everybody at the table should have a voice. And we can do a better job in different times with transparency. I have enjoyed all of my colleagues down here. There isn't a single one down here I'm not proud to stand alongside. We just need a lot more good news about why our colleagues are cool. And thank you for asking the question. I've never been asked that before. And it's about time we have people actually recognizing that there are a lot of really good, hardworking colleagues. I don't care what letters behind their name. They're here to do their work, and they're trying to serve their districts, and that's what they're doing. But
Very
thanks
good.
for asking.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Finally, I wanted to ask you, it says, in your bio that you're a small business owner. Talk a little bit about your business and how that translated to help you out up here, and what different perspectives that gives you. I mean, it's not just the rags to riches story of a Wilmer kid makes good, right?
No, I'm a small business owner, and honestly, my wife and I went into business back in 1999. Bought a small hotel. I've been in the hotel restaurant business for a number of years, working for other people. Had the opportunity to buy a small hotel, and we grew that to another hotel. We bought a restaurant. We bought a second restaurant. We've bought and sold a few restaurants over the years. So 15 years later, my wife and I own Baker Hospitalities, which is a large restaurant in Wilmer. Does a lot of weddings and at the golf course. It's called the Oaks at Eagle Creek. We also own the Wilmer Super 8 in Wilmer. And we also have a company called Green Lake Cruises, which does 2-hour kind of party cruises on Green Lake in Spicer, Minnesota, which is just north of Wilmer. So we've really been enjoying our hospitality company. We get really busy in the summer. But I've also been active with business groups like the Minnesota Chamber, the Restaurant Association over the years. I'm proud to be members of those organizations, and I've been helping them with business advocacy here at the Capitol over the years, and that's what kind of got me a taste of this, I guess. And I think back in 2005 is when I got more active in here. I lost my son in 2011, and I think the combination of me seeing the state going in a direction I wasn't happy with, tax-wise, and just trying to, they were getting rid of or shooing away some of the most successful businesses in Minnesota, and most successful residents were leaving the state because of our tax policy. And along with my son's loss, I think I felt like I could do some good things here. So that's when I decided to say, if my business can support it, and I got the blessing from my beautiful wife, Mary, of 32 years, I decided this was the time to do it. So I've been so lucky to be here from Candioi County District 17B. We've got 35 employees that are allowing me to be here, and my wife and my team, and I'm looking forward to going home working this summer. That's why I'm still a small business, but it does give me a different perspective of how things ought to work around here.
Well, you just earned a lot of points right there.
Hey.
I'm sure you plugged the wife, you got the business in there, you got the constituents, the employees. We didn't leave anybody out, did we?
No, I think we've got some great turkey burgers, by the way, too, at the Oaks. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, it's an honor to do business in Minnesota as well. So, but it provides me with a good perspective of things here.
Well, fantastic. Well, I want to thank you today, Representative Baker,
Marty,
for
thank you very
sitting
much.
down with us.
It's been an honor.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very
Looking
much.
forward to do this again. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime. That's it from the Capitol this week. We'll see you next Tuesday. So long, everybody. Good night.